Hello, and welcome to another lunchtime learning session with us here at Robinson's Facility Services. I'm your host, Kevin Ayres, and with me today, I have the brilliant Matt, who is our resident electrical testing expert. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice to be here. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, brilliant to have you. So I'm looking forward to diving into the world of electrics. I was joking with a friend the other day, like he got some work done in his house, and there's just like, is there ever enough plugs in a house?
No, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
It just doesn't matter how many plugs you have installed in your house. There's never enough. Like I also don't know where all the phone chargers go. It's like they've kind of teamed up with the socks, I think. But this is a big issue, right? So the more we have all these cables and stuff, everything we have is powered by electricity these days. It all needs to be tested and kept on top of, right?
Absolutely, that is true. Yes. So if I could just throw a statistic out there to start with.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah, certainly we're talking the commercial environment. Approximately 20% of all commercial fires are caused by some kind of electrical fault, and that figure. That 20% is second only to arson, actually. So it is, a major risk that needs reducing as much as possible.
So you see, it's almost like then if we don't get this sorted, it's almost like self-arson. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's something we can do. It's really quite risky. And as we all know, I think we've probably all been guilty of daisy chaining things and putting stuff that's too powerful on something that really shouldn't be on, all of those kind of.
Yeah. I mean, there are some very simple steps that can be taken that doesn't need major expertise and that everybody in the workplace can carry out. So
yeah, I think as well, it starts before we get into this, I'll just share a quick story. I was at a client's site the other day, and I needed power for my laptop, and he said, "I'll just take that extension cable. It's like standard sort of 4-block extension cable with a cable." And I picked it up. It's like really hot when I picked it up, and it was like, and he said, "Oh, what's going on there?" And and the plug was a bit dodgy, or so, I don't know, something was going on. He didn't blink. He just chucked it straight in the bin, and I was well impressed. He didn't try and kind of fiddle with it. It's like it's a throwaway item, and he just threw it away. And I was well impressed. I thought, because I used to work in, as I may have mentioned on these things before, I used to work in the oil industry, absolutely drummed into a safety first. So I was super impressed with that. So
yeah, anything like chargers like that, they're so cheap to replace. It's not worth looking into them too deeply. If you can see something visual that's wrong with it, definitely get rid of it. Yeah, absolutely.
So look, Matt, what do we mean by it? Like, what actually is electrical testing? I think we've already understood why it's critical, but like, what do we actually mean by electrical testing?
So electrical testing and inspection is basically critical in reducing the risk of fire and electrical injury in the workplace. Also private landlords as well for premises they let out to tenants. The onus of responsibility in keeping electric appliances safe at all times comes on the business owner, the landlord, not just to protect employees and tenants, but also members of the public, contractors and anybody else who comes on site. So to be able to achieve that, there are 3 types of testing in essence. So we have PAT testing, which is, I think most people know, but for those that don't, it's PAT, which stands for portable appliance testing. So anything.
I wondered whether you were actually going to say that, because I'm like, who is Pat? Why do we blame him for everything?
Yeah, you got people saying, "Oh, we mean our PAC testing doing PAC," and it's like, yeah, no, it's PAT. But so I thought.
So sorry. What? Spell it out again. Sorry, I interrupted
you. PAT, which stands for portable appliance testing, which is in essence anything that has a power lead with a plug on the end. It's as simple as that. which are numerous in most workplaces, offices.
So this isn't, just to be clear, therefore, because I would have assumed it's sockets as well, but they're obviously fixed, so that isn't pat testing.
No, sockets are different. I can come to that in a moment. No, you portable appliances, so portable in nature, so they can be moved around. Anything that's got a power lead with a plug. As well as that, just as important is almost the opposite of pat testing, because it's called fixed appliance testing.
Right.
Some people call it FAT, but for the purpose of this, I'm not going to say pat and FAT. So I'll call it pat and then fixed appliance testing. So
it makes sense, I guess, if you've got portable appliance testing and you've got fixed appliance testing. Yeah.
So fixed appliances are appliances that are hardwired into the wall, so they don't have a plug on the end. There are less of them than portable appliances, but for example, hand dryers in toilets, some wall heaters are hardwired into the wall, some cooker hoods, things like that. So that
you've just sparked, pardon the pun. It's funny how, like, the right puns, like it subconsciously come to you, isn't it? I've just remembered when you say hand dryers. I remember being probably about 10 in school, drying my hands, and got a shock off the hand dryer, and then had to. I was like, whoa, had to go report it. So yeah, it's.
They are important.
I remember that for like a long time, 40 years or something. But yeah.
Those sort of things are touched by hand all the time. So it is important that they're safe as well. And the third area of testing is what's known as EICR, which stands for Electrical Installation Condition Report. So this is more of a report. It's a little like, you could probably compare it a little bit like an MOT. It's a report on the condition of your electrical installation, which starts at your fuse board with the little circuit switches. Everybody will have one at home under the stairs somewhere. So in a commercial environment, the circuits leave the fuse board and then end up eventually via various devices end up at the plug socket in the wall. So it's looking for defects in that installation. So they're your three areas of testing that you need to be looking at to comply with health and safety regulation and health and safety at work.
Brilliant, and that's really helped. It's just helped me sort of clear it up, because I think probably for the uninitiated, they probably, everybody knows pat testing. The pat test guy comes around and goes, I have to unplug everything if you stop work and whatever. I don't know about the viewers, but I'd probably lump it all together in pat testing. So it's helpful to understand those three distinctions. And I just want to say now, we've got a lot of people online, which is brilliant. So if you've just joined and missed the start of that, I'm here with Matt, and we are looking at electrical testing and compliance today. So thank you for joining us. If you haven't joined us for one of these before, we're going to be here for about 45 minutes max. We'll finish with some kind of quick fire questions if we have time, but we'd love to have your questions. So do feel free in the chat to post your questions. We will, if it's relevant, we'll take them during the session, or if we're sort of running out of time a little bit, we might wait till the end, or if we get a lot of questions. But it would be great to have some interaction with you. If you have a burning question, again, pardon the pun, that you would like to pose to Matt, he's here, we've got him, do feel free to ask. So Matt, let's crack on. So you alluded before that the onus is on, say, landlords, and a lot of the topics that we cover here at Robbins Facility Services, it often involves some kind of level of safety. And as having been a landlord myself, I'm kind of like, never mind what the law says, like, I want to be able to sleep at night. I'm not going to, I'm not going to kill somebody or something. So there's that burden, I guess. But what are the legal and regulatory requirements? Like, what do I have to do as if I'm looking after a commercial property?
Yeah, if you're in terms of, we'll start with the private landlord side of things. If you let out a private premises to a tenant, in terms of EICR, which I mentioned was the main installation in the building, you have a legal obligation to have that tested every 5 years. That's part of your legal obligation. There's no getting away from that. Also, if you are supplying, a lot of landlords will supply unfurnished premises, but may well supply a couple of white goods in the kitchen, such as a washing machine or, a dryer, things like that. Your obligation is to make sure that those appliances are safe at all times. There's no legal obligation to say that you have to have those pat tested every so often. However, insurance policies are definitely something to look at. They may say they want your white goods pat testing every 12 months or in between tenancies.
So read the small print, basically.
Read the small print, yeah, but there's nothing in the Health and Safety at Work Act that says in terms of pat testing that you have to have that carried out. But you do have to make sure your appliances are safe at all times. So pat testing is evidence. If you've got paper evidence that you've had that carried out, then you are certainly covering yourselves.
And a lot of the type of appliances you mentioned there that a landlord might supply or that we have are often in the kitchen, right? And they're washing machines, kettles, things that involve water as well. So I guess the risk goes up as well if there's a risk of shock or whatever.
Yeah. The only other thing to mention is if you're a landlord of an HMO, house of multiple occupation, obviously they're registered with the council, so you would liaise with the council. They may tell you that they want appliances testing, 12 monthly or in between tenancies. That just depends on the council. But as far as the EICR is concerned, that is a legal obligation every 5 years. So that's, and also if you may own a holiday let, which is fully furnished. So in that case, if you're supplying the TVs, the lamps, everything in the lounge, the Wi-Fi hub, all that sort of thing would be your responsibility.
Sure. But what about, and I guess this perhaps more relevant to folk on this call, what about for managing commercial property? What's your responsibility then?
It's a bit more grey, to be honest, which is why I said we'll go through the private rental sector first, because that was the
okay, right.
Very much need to look at lease agreements, which will dictate who has to carry out, specifically EICR. Really, that's the main thing where you get disputes. Is it the landlord? Is it the occupier? Generally speaking, in most cases, the landlord will be responsible for the EICR, keeping on top of that. But again, it's not set in stone. You really do need to read the lease agreement.
So I guess that's before we dive into like who's responsible. Let's take somebody's responsible. So for each of those. For the PAT, the FAT, the EIC, I love that, EICR, what is the responsibility? So you mentioned 5 years if it's a private, somebody renting out their old house, like was in my situation. There's no requirement for a PAT and a FAT, but there is a requirement to keep it safe. What about, let's keep it simple, it's a commercial property that my company own. I'm not renting it to anybody else, I'm not subletting it or anything like that. What do I actually so it's obviously me or my company. What do I have to do in terms of how often, how rigorous, etc.? Can I do it myself? Do I need somebody like you to come in, or who does it? And what do I have to do?
Okay.
And how?
Okay, so if you've got your own premises, your own business, obviously you've got your legal obligation to keep your electrical appliances, everything safe for your employees. In most environments, say office and low risk environments, many companies will have an EICR every 5 years. There are other industries that are a bit more heavy industrial. For example, there could be a lot of dust and dirt around, so you get ingress of dirt in the circuits, and depending on the state of the installation as well. How old is it? You know, some of these old industrial buildings have got, you know, absolutely ancient installations. So that could be 3 yearly. And there's also anywhere that's like a swimming pool or a sauna, or, you know, anywhere that provides wet room facilities is generally a year. I mean, these are not set in stone.
I was going to say, I'm picking up a risk assessment approach rather than a statutory 5 years, 3 years, 1 year kind of.
Yeah, in terms of PAT testing and fixed appliance testing, it does have to come from the business owner. The frequency, assuming they want to go down that route to comply with legislation, through risk assessment. Maybe looking at previous reports and seeing how many appliances failed. If you did if the last time you had PAT testing done was 2 years ago and you had lots and lots of fails, should you be having it done more often?
And so, in terms of, you know, is it the health and safety executive that would be keeping tabs on this sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, facilities managers, health and safety employees. Obviously, if you're the business owner, you need to liaise very closely with them to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because ultimately, you know.
I guess, sorry, Matt, I guess what I'm getting at is, do I need to do a risk assessment, or at least would it be sort of frowned upon if, you know, the health and safety executive turn up, you know, or some sort of health and safety inspector turns up and goes, right, when was the last time you had everything tested? Like, he or she can't force you to do that, but like, are they going to look fairly poorly on, well, you know, where's your risk assessments? You know, what's the, even if it's not written in stone, what's the expectation? I think
if you haven't got any written documentation to prove that you've shown good practice, that suggests that maybe, you know, you're not really showing due diligence and keeping on top of the problems. If you've got documentation that you can pull out the drawer and say, oh, you know, even if it might have been too long ago, at least you've shown that you've given the obviously it's a very important subject, but
you thought about it, maybe you've fallen off the wagon.
You've got the evidence
at one point,
you've got the evidence that testing's taken place, whether it be ICR, PAT testing, fixed appliance testing. So it is important to definitely have the paperwork. It's no good doing the testing and say, oh, I did it 3 months ago, but I haven't got anything to show for it, you know. So it is, it's important for you know, the business owners to keep on top of it.
So it sounds like there's a sort of sense of documenting the process and sort of showing due diligence. And I guess I come back to at the end of, you know, what you started this whole thing with, which was like most fires, other than deliberate arson, in terms of, you know, unintended fire, this is number one. So and as we said, there's so many wires, cables, and what have you. You know, it's really important. Laura raises a good question, so let's put that on screen. Laura's saying, if you don't have documents to prove that compliancy, would this mean you're breaching the Health and Safety at Work Act?
No, it wouldn't, because as I think I said originally, the Health and Safety at Work Act means or suggests that you have to keep your appliances safe at all times. It doesn't say that you have to do this by carrying out PAT testing or fixed appliance testing or EICR unless you're a private landlord. But if you don't have that evidence that you've done something to protect your appliances, you've got nothing to show that you know you're complying with the legislation. But it is not a law that you have to have PAT testing or any other testing done unless you're a private.
So Matt, I'm guessing that in reality then, if they go round and find all sorts of problems and you can't show that you've done any testing or anything, that's not going to work great. If they go round and go, well, this is all amazing, this is the best we've ever seen, but you've got no documentation, they're probably not going to worry, because, you know, it's like, well, like, okay, you've got to, like, it would be even better if you could do some documentation next time, it's best practice, blah, blah, blah. but they're probably not going to take any action.
No, I mean, the three ways of testing inspection we just mentioned are the most recognised ways of complying, of making life easy for yourself and complying with the legislation of keeping appliances safe at all times. I think you'd be making life very difficult for yourself if you ignore those and just hope for the best.
Just got another quick question from Thomas, and then I want to actually, it'd be great to actually look at what does bad practice look like, so we know what we're looking for. So Thomas is asking, sometimes people refer to EICR and fixed wire testing as being the same thing. Is that correct, or are they both completely separate tasks?
EICR and fixed wire testing are the same thing. Fixed wire testing is an older, probably people referred to fixed wire testing more sort of 10 years ago, but the correct term for the same thing is, in this day and age, is EICR. So electrical installation condition report is where we are today. But if anybody says to you, can we have a quote for fixed wire testing, it is EICR, the same thing. Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's from the name, the condition report, it probably looks a little bit more than previously, like the surroundings, the kind of context and environment that everything's going on, or is it just a pure name change?
It's the same. I mean, part of an EICR is actually testing the circuits on the fuse board. There are tests that go on there, so hence why it used to be called testing. But in essence, an EICR is a bit like, as I said, a bit like an MOT. So it's quite a complex, in-depth report. It's not a bit more. There's a lot more to it than, say, PAT testing. But at the end of it, you will, on an industry standard report, which we would use, it would either come back as the installation is satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Yeah. If it's unsatisfactory,
I guess what I mean by condition is that a fixed wire, and maybe this did include this anyway, but it almost implies exactly, we're just going to test the continuity of the circuits, there's no earth leaks or whatever. But a condition report might imply, well, is there anything broken? It's not the electrical bits, but it's the insulation, the coverings, the covers, all of those sort of things. Is this generally in good condition? Yeah. Is that true, or would that have been under the previous thing anyway?
It would have been under the previous fixed wire testing as well. But it's just a different term for the same thing, really.
It sounds a bit posher, let's be honest. Yeah. So somebody's gone right with to make it sound more important. But okay, that's great. That's helpful to understand. So thank you, Thomas. So look, I think it would be good to actually look at what we can do, what we can all do, even if we're not experts. Like, what does bad practice look like? And I'm sure we've all seen some of these sort of things. Hopefully not in our own homes or offices, but I'm sure we've seen them in other people's offices. So could you talk us through these, Matt?
Yeah, these are photos of situations that would have occurred when our sort of PAT tester turns up and what he might find. If we talk, the first photo is the burnt out extension lead plug, likely to have been caused by overloading that extension lead with too many high-powered appliances. It's actually good knowledge for you to have at home as well, because on the back of the extension lead plugs, there will be a reading on there that says the maximum amount of power that you can put through that extension, usually 13 amp. Every single device that you plug into the extension lead draws a certain amount of power, and some appliances are high powered, such as most of your kitchen. If you get an extension lead and plugged all your kitchen appliances in at once, like your fridge, your washing machine, your dryer, if you plugged all those in, you'd be overloading that extension lead. Each individual appliance will have a reading on the side of it showing how much power that will draw, and if you add it all up and it exceeds the maximum of 13 amps, that's can easily be what happens, potentially causing a fire.
I'm guessing, I guess, would you say, I'm kind of making this up here, but it'd be interesting to know what you think. So if you've got something, I've got a little heater. I basically live in a farmhouse where, it's basically a colander, so it's quite cold. So I've got a little fan heater going on here. Anything that kind of heats, or like an iron, or presumably it's preferable, if you possibly can, just stick it straight into the wall rather than through an extension cable like that, because then it can take it.
Yeah, absolutely. The more wall sockets, the better, because you're extracting power from the fuse board on a separate circuit. So basically, you're plugging that extension lead into one circuit and plugging, 3 or 4 high-powered devices in. That's putting so much pressure on that circuit, and that's the end result of what can happen. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah, go for the next one. I wonder what's happened here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, this is clearly underneath that probably insulation tape. There'll be some exposed wires. I know some people think, oh, well, I wrapped it. It's insulation tape. It'll be fine. That's what it's for. But that is hiding, obviously, some original fault exposed wiring. Insulation tape is probably okay if you're, replacing a bulb or tying some ends up and leaving them in the roof. But extension leads like that are going to be handled all the time, and that tape's just going to deteriorate. So, if it's not a fail, it's going to stay there all year, and probably next year it'll be exposed again. So that's an automatic fail as well. Seen by a pat test.
You surprised me. You surprised me, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That is to like get you through to the end of the day at worst case, and then chuck it, right? But preferably chuck it straight away.
Chuck it straight away. Yeah. A pat tester would probably notify somebody on site straight away and say, it needs getting rid of, and a big red "do not use" sticker put on it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at the next ones here. Classic. I think we've all probably had or probably got one of those in our house somewhere, right?
Absolutely. This is by far the most common thing that we see in premises. Whilst it doesn't look too bad and it'll work fine, there should never be any coloured cable showing anywhere on a power lead or anywhere near the top of the plug. It's very common for that to be sticking out the top of the plug, but that grey insulation cable needs to go right into the plug. That is potentially dangerous. Again, that is a fail.
And it's, I guess, because those 2 little screws there, they need to be clamping down. They're the clamp, isn't it? So they need to be clamping down, not on the coloured wires, but on the insulation, so that, because otherwise you've got this nice, faults waiting to happen, right? By just moving the cables to and fro, plug it in and out, right? The
danger of exposed wiring there. So that grey label needs to be clamped in those 2 screws inside the plug. That is the most common. We've got hundreds and hundreds of photos of that.
I can well imagine, and there's plenty of people online now thinking, oh yeah, there is that extension. I really want to do something about that. So quick afterwards, out with the screwdriver.
So I mean, these photos that we're going through, are what just regular checks that staff can do periodically, every month or 2. Have a look under your desk, have a look in the warehouse, and just let your facilities manager know, or health and safety person. It's if you know what you're looking for and you know what's going to fail, it's reasonably some of this is reasonably straightforward.
Well, I mentioned being in the oil industry before. It's one of those things. We're all responsible for safety, and these are easy wins. I think anyone knows that shouldn't be like that. So and if we didn't before, we do now. So so let's have a look at our final slide here.
Well, these are really just a bit of fun, because you're not going to see this every day, but these are genuine appliances that our engineers have come across. The first one is obviously there's a kettle, but the whole bottom's fallen off. And it was in use. You could probably still plug it in the middle, and it probably still work. But clearly, I don't.
It's just arteries for electrocuted.
People might not notice that the bottom had come off and just put it on the base. I don't know, but that's got to go. Yeah, absolutely. And on the right hand side,
now this one, you say it's unusual, but I think we've all seen and we've had. This doesn't happen overnight. This is I know we're going to say this is a microwave, right? This is a bad one, but I think we've all seen microwaves where the paint's starting to chip away, it's starting to corrode. You're like, well, should I do anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, this, I'm not going to tell you whose premises it was on, but it was a customer in the northwest, but I won't say any more than that. And that was in their staff room kitchen. It was earlier this year.
Right.
Now, yeah, it was plugged in and it probably still worked. But yeah, you can't. Yeah, it's definitely a pat test fail. Is that it's got exposed, corroding metal. If it's in a state like that, it just needs obviously replacing. I think whoever's been using that have probably got bigger problems than the sort of fire and electrical issues to start with. It's more.
Yeah, but like I say, I guess my point is that the one on the left probably happened like that, and either people didn't notice it, but it happened suddenly. The one on the right didn't happen overnight, and it would have been slowly getting worse and worse, and people are just sort of ignoring it. And because it's become part of their daily life, because they're using it every day, they don't really notice it, or they keep excusing it. And one day somebody comes in, looks at it, and it looks like that. And that's that, it's the thin end of the wedge, isn't it? So we need to start, at the end of the day, that microwave doesn't look like an expensive microwave. It's probably 50 quid. It's just like, just chuck it out,
I mean, we do. Yeah, that is probably the worst example. We have seen quite a few corroded microwaves and things like student accommodation, as you'd expect. But yeah, it is unusual, but it's not. It's very unusual to have one like that. But corroded microwaves are not that unusual. But,
yeah. Well, like I say, just because it happens gradually, right? Especially that front bit, not so much in the middle, but the edges, and especially that front bit where the door goes to and fro. There's a lot of bashing. Certainly we've had one at home where it's starting to chip, and is it bad enough? And really ought to get rid of it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just things that you can look out for every day. I mean, a visual check is only the first part of a pat test that an engineer will look at, but obviously, these are things that employees can look out for.
Absolutely. So if you go and check your staff room, your canteen after this, maybe you're in the canteen because it's a lunch and lunchtime learning. So look around, see what you can spot. So firstly, thanks for that, Matt. We've got a question from Ryan. We were talking about wall sockets. Ryan asks, is it possible to overload a wall socket?
No. Wall sockets are designed to take generally the most powerful thing that you're going to have in a low risk workplace is something that takes 240 volts. In an industrial, so no, it is.
It's probably like a fire, basically. An electrical fire is probably the highest thing, isn't it? Because it's designed to chuck out a lot of heat.
Yeah, but no, it isn't. No, if there's a problem, then you would have it should get picked up in an EICR you get circuits tripping if there's an issue with the circuit.
I was going to say, in the unlikely event that you did, the circuit would just trip, and they go so fast, don't they? It's really, really fast. So I can't remember what the speed is, but I remember electrician telling me it's like crazy fast.
Like without putting an extension in an overloaded extension, you should be okay.
No, but good question. It's an obvious question, and thank you for answering. And so, coming back to the point that you were getting into in multi-tenancy, multi-let buildings, if you started to answer that, but who is responsible, both for the EICR, but also the PAT and the I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say it, the FAT testing. Who's responsible for those things?
Yeah, so I think we mentioned looking at lease agreements. Majority of times it will be the landlord's responsibility to do the EICR and make sure appliances are safe that they supply. If it's a multi-let or multi-tenure building, you're going to have communal areas, a reception, a kitchen. So generally, that is generally the landlord's responsibility. The occupiers, the people who come in and work in there, the tenants, the businesses, the duty of care is on them to make sure their own appliances are safe. That is almost always the case. The grey area is usually with the EICR to look at lease agreements.
So if I'm bringing things into the building, I'm generally responsible. And if it's more sort of it's the classic, you turn the building upside down, what falls out, it's probably, if nothing falls out, is probably the landlord's responsibility. If it falls out, it's probably the tenant's responsibility. But there are some grey areas. Read the small print, discuss with your landlord, right?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so helpful. Could you give us, I mean, you said that there aren't hard and fast, you mentioned before, but like what's best practice for each of the 3 types of testing? What would you say is best practice? For example, I've got a classic office, lots of computers, maybe a kettle, a microwave in the staff room, but it's not a high industrial place. It's much more sort of standard office environment. What would I expect how often should I pat test? I know I don't legally have to, but like, what would be best practice?
Generally office environments are regarded as low risk because your appliances are generally plugged in all the time. You're not taking them out and moving stuff around that much. Most customers will look at 12, 24 months, 1 or 2 years for office equipment. Kitchen equipment, probably, I'm not really allowed to tell anybody what they should be doing, but yeah, often.
It's the best practice here. These are tips rather than shoulds.
I don't want to got myself in it, but kitchen equipment generally annually. There is industries that require testing more frequently than annually. For example, workshops that might have a lot of power tools, joinery equipment. So, they're getting unplugged all the time, thrown around, thrown in the back of the vans to go on site.
Sharp things that could cut cables and
the cables, you see an awful lot of damage, cut cables and exposed wires on those. So often power tools, 3 to 6 monthly. A lot of companies.
Wow, right.
Yeah.
Just because they're very it's a high power thing. It's being moved. It's designed to be portable. It's very portable.
It's going off site, and they workmen don't exactly sort of place them nicely in the back of the van. It's like.
Yeah, and those cables really get a bashing, don't they? They get wound up and stretched, and not everybody's good at doing cables properly, and they treat it like rope and goodness knows what, right?
Yeah. So it is each industry, is specific to its own sort of frequency. Really.
No, that's really helpful. I mean, a lot of that's common sense, right? Isn't it? If you're in a really, if equipment's getting a beating, get it tested regularly. Like it's going to keep it and your staff safe. So look, we're really wow. We've talked for like almost 40 minutes already. I've really enjoyed it. We've got some quick fire questions which we can dive into, but again, just an invitation for you guys watching online. We've got another 5 minutes or so please do type in any questions you have, and I can ask those to Matt. Could I so ask a couple of these questions? Can I rely on an existing EICR when I'm buying or taking over a building, or is that something I really should do again? Is it worth the paper it's written on?
If you manage to get your hands on the report when you move in, there will be a date on there when it was when the EICR was last carried out, and there will also, if it's been carried out by a qualified electrician, there would be a recommended retest date period. So if you move into the premises within that date period, then it should be okay. However, what you do need to try and work out is, has there been any alteration to the installation since the report was done before you moved in?
Right.
So it's quite common to add an extra circuit or two in there. Who's done it? And if that's happened, there should be a minor work certificate that comes with that work. to show that it's been carried out.
So you wouldn't necessarily need to get it done all over again, but you do need to sort of check for the addendum.
Yeah. You need to make sure that the installation hasn't been altered since the report. And if it has, you need the paperwork to back that up to go with the report. But equally, if you're not sure, then it's not a really expensive thing to do unless you've got sort of 10 or 15 of them.
Right. So Laura's got a good question, which is similar sort of vein. As a landlord, are you legally required to have a new EICR conducted on change of tenancy?
The answer to that is no. As a landlord, you are legally required to have an EICR every 5 years. So the change of tenancy, you need to be looking more at possibly PAT testing, change of tenancy or annually, but EICR in the private letting industry is every 5 years.
And presumably that's the same for commercial properties as well.
It is, but it's not a legal obligation in commercial property, whereas private landlords it is. That's the difference.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I guess because people are sleeping there, they're there for much longer, potentially periods of time, and they're there when they're not actually conscious. So as where hopefully if people are in office, they can get it going.
That legislation only came in sort of in the last year or two. So before that, it used to be a recommendation to keep on top of the legislation rather than.
It's probably going to end up with, I'm guessing it'll eventually, these things never ratchet backwards, do they? So it'll probably eventually be commercial buildings as well. Interesting one, this, because you mentioned, I think you mentioned or assumed, get the book out or something. How should electrical test records be stored? I'm thinking, is that now typically stored digitally? Are we looking at QR codes, tags, RFID tags? Like, is it just a bit of paper in a book? What should these be stored now?
I mean, if you're using Robinson's, our reports come on an industry. Talking about EICR first, come on an industry standard report form with industry standard tick boxes and questions that are all answered by the engineer. We generally send those out in a PDF electronically on email. If the installation is unsatisfactory, we would provide a PDF quote to remedy the defects that have been found. Again, PAT testing, there would be a list of appliances tested, again on a PDF with corresponding serial numbers. Each PAT testing appliance would have a serial number put on it on a label, hopefully with a green pass on it. And then the corresponding serial number will be written on the report so you can match them up. So if you're in an office and you see this power lead here, and it's like 805 is the number, you go in your office now, 805 is on the appliance. So it is paperwork and fixed appliance testing, the hand dryers, etc. Again, paperwork, and you also get a certificate of compliance to say PAT testing has been carried out to comply with the electricity work regulations.
Well, I'm guessing you could have, if you've got more of like a physical file store system, you could just have a folder with like the PAT testing file. I'm guessing if you've got more of like a building management system that this plug is, or this socket is number whatever, it's got its own little code or whatever, you can probably store it under, store the paperwork under that, so it's all, the history of that thing is all stored together. But
But by doing that, you can create a whole, over the years, you can create a whole, show a whole period of testing and compliance that's been carried out.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about electrical testing? Like, can that help reduce business disruption?
Well, the obvious one is, to minimise the risk of fire. There's no bigger business interruption than a fire. It can also pick up, it's not its main purpose, in terms of PAT testing, it's not its main purpose, but it can pick up potential appliance failure. And as well. So if, you know, depending on what the appliance is, can make a difference to how much business interruption it may cause if it fails. So yeah, potentially it's not the main reason why pat testing and
safety primarily. Yeah,
it's almost like a byproduct. It could definitely pick up any
I'm just going to take one last question from David. We are at time though, so if you need to drop off, really appreciate you joining us today. I'm just going to put the banner up as well to remind you where you can, if you know any of the questions raised, if there's any concerns, questions raised, then do have a look and contact Robinson's Facility Services on that phone number or the email, or take a look at the website. So just while that's ticking along, I will bring up David's question. Would pat testing have to be carried out by an external contractor, or can a competent and trained member of staff carry out these tests within the business?
So yes, a trained member of staff, a competent trained member of staff can carry out pat testing within the business. Yes, obviously what they would need, we've shown you some examples of visual fails which are fairly straightforward, but in addition to that, a full pat test would require a machine test which picks up things that you can't see, such as earth continuity readings, polarity, insulation resistance readings. They're all things that you can't see with the naked eye. So you would have to firstly buy yourself a machine, learn how to understand the readings, and ideally provide your own documentation. So yes, you can do it yourself, but there is a little bit of complexity to it. But there's no reason why.
I'm guessing though, in terms of that compliance, paper trail, etc., you'd want to have that person, documented that they are actually, they've been on some sort of recognised training course. Otherwise, it's not just like, well, I'll have a go, Otherwise, like it's probably not really. I mean, it may genuinely make you safer, but it doesn't. It's hard to prove it, right? So that I'm guessing that would help. And B, I'm guessing you've kind of got a vested interest. It's a bit of a conflict of interest still, it strikes me. So it still doesn't seem like, even if you do have somebody that's competent, they work for you. So are they trying to give you a,
if there's something that they're probably, if it's something that's 50-50, they probably are, it'll be all right, possibly. But yeah, the answer to that question is you can do it in-house through training. Although it's like anything, you can, if you've got the right tools, you can do it yourself. But if you haven't, sometimes it's easier to contract it out. So yeah, it's always worth getting a quote from an external contractor, and then weighing the options, because it's not always as expensive as you think it might be.
Well, look, Matt, really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us, taking the time. Thank you so much to everybody who's watching. If you haven't seen our other videos, do take a look at Robinson's fs.com/video. You can see all of the other webinars that we've done on a whole range of safety topics. That you'll find those really useful. But for now, just to say thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Again, thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you.